Seahawks fans, wherever you may be, welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Seahawks fans, welcome back to another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, here with Keith Myers. We're going to talk Seahawks football. Got a lot on the agenda today, so we got to be quick right into the show. But first, I got to say hi to my good friend, Keith Myers.
Hey, how's it going? It's been an eventful week. It seems like we used to record on in the morning, and then it got shifted a little later, and now we're in the later afternoon. So we've got some better beverages along for the
what was that?
For the show.
That is a nice looking glass just by itself, but
it is. That is a Freem from Hood River, Freem brandy snifter full of barrel aged tiramisu porter from Wandering Hop Brewing, and it is excellent. So This is what happens this is the nice thing about recording later in the afternoon. Yeah. Is we get to enjoy better beverages.
Now, in my little nifty little wine glass that isn't really a wine glass anymore, it's more of a cup. I just have my basic Italian red blend, and it's good. It's really good this time of the afternoon. It is later because you're back at physical school. Mm-hmm. Teaching for the first time in how long?
Just under a year. So the school's closed on the 13th of March, and they reopened with students in the building on the 1st of March. So That will tell you how long it's been since we've had students in the building with us, which is, it is what it is. So.
Well, I mean, it's exciting, and you're kind of apprehensive a little bit, and life kind of gets back to normal, but everyone's still kind of socially distanced and has the masks and stuff. But that's there's some hope at the end of the tunnel, and it's as a matter of fact, the vaccine here in Arizona just became available for folks my age and older. So that we could start to make appointments. I'm actually getting my first dose of the vaccine, Moderna vaccine, on Friday. And the follow-up is, I think, the 1st or 2nd of April, I think. So I've already got both of them booked.
Yeah.
With the first one coming Friday. I'm excited, because my folks got theirs. I'm getting mine. It sounds like, everyone's getting ready to kind of open this whole thing up for everybody to kind of get in this thing, and hopefully we can kind of this time next year everything will be back.
Forget this time next year. Sometime this summer.
Yeah, sometime this summer. I just don't want to get too optimistic.
Well, so what happened? What came out today? We'll get into the football here in a second, but what came out today is that because of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine getting approved, they can now produce enough, because we have 3 different people producing vaccines. They can produce enough vaccine to have every adult in America have at least their first shot of the 2 in May.
Yeah.
Which means by the end of June, we have everyone fully vaccinated.
That's terrific, man.
And so that means this summer we're back to normal. And by fall, we're everything is normal. We're going to have fans in the stands for games.
Yes. I mean, you're still looking probably at like a 70% vaccination rate, maybe slightly higher than that, hopefully. But still you have to worry about folks traveling into this country from other countries that maybe haven't had the success of vaccinations yet. Still, right? And
true,
but how do you kind of mitigate that?
So they're going to come in, but who are they going to give it to? Because as a population, if 75% of our population's been vaccinated, we have herd immunity, so it's not going to spread throughout the population.
Well, it is interesting though, and even in herd immunity, you can have pockets of places that are more or less vaccinated than some of the other areas of the country. And so you could still have a few things, but nonetheless, some optimistic stuff coming down the pipe. And I'm here for it. Today's show, we have a lot going on today. There's some news recently about a quarterback you guys might have heard of. That's just been all over the news, and trade rumors, and the coach quarterback relationship is completely damaged and irreparable. You've heard it all from it's nothing, it's just a bunch of noise in the off season, to he's going to get traded, and these are the 4 teams he's going to, and somewhere in the middle lies the truth. And we're going to talk about all that today a little bit right up front, as soon as I get done talking about what we're going to talk about. And then we're going to go into some of the prospects in the draft at 2 position groups, the quarterback. And how did we pick that one? I don't know. It just happened to be the quarterback this week, as well as running back. So we're going to take a look at those 2 position groups in the draft and identify some players that we think would be good fits on the Seattle Seahawks and available. So we'll skip over we'll mention some of the guys at the top, but we'll focus on some of the guys in the mid rounds where the Seahawks are drafting this year to see if we can improve the team. All right. So let's start this Russell Wilson conversation a little bit. We kind of last week after we recorded, of course.
Always, it's after we record that
we record.
The Seahawks decide to break some news.
Yeah, exactly. So the Atlantic article from Michael Sean Duger, Mike Sando, Jason Jenks was kind of earth-shattering a little bit. In the way that they put it all together. So
I will say that particular group is a all-star team of Seattle-based reporters. I mean, Mike Sando covered the Seahawks for the Tacoma News Tribune forever, moved to ESPN Insider, and covered the NFC West for almost a decade now before moving to The Athletic. Jinx was at the Seattle Times and did a phenomenal job there before moving to The Athletic. And Michael Sean Duger was, I think he was actually with the Tacoma News Tribune as well for a couple of years. And
they do a great job, and they did a tremendous job on this article. Got some national attention out of this thing because it was so well done.
Yeah, it was really well researched. So
basically, prior to this article, there was just a bunch of loose little rumors and loose little, words said that maybe got stretched and maybe misinterpreted or whatever you want to say. But there was just a lot of things out there with some sources that were just kind of random and all over the place. And we kind of played it off a little bit just because there wasn't anything really foundationally something that we could hold on to that was like straight out of Wilson's mouth or straight out of Pete Carroll, other than what was said at press conferences at the end of the year. So everything else just seemed like speculation. So we were just kind of going to let that ride a little bit because it wasn't really newsworthy. But this thing kind of put it into context and into perspective. So basically it outlines the working relationship between Russell Wilson, Seattle's quarterback, Pete Carroll, John Schneider, and the Seahawks organization. And if you want to add, Russell Wilson's camp into it as well, his agent and so forth is the source of some of these comments that have been made. And the overall media reaction to everything that's been going on is dominated. Sports talk radio, articles on ESPN, ESPN First Take, whatever you name the ESPN sports talk show in the afternoons, mornings and afternoons, and it's been the feature story for a while now. And basically it's comes down to that the relationship between Wilson and Pete is strained. And it lists out many reasons why. And in the Atlantic article, it chronologically kind of puts it all together from prior seasons and then kind of picks it up in earnest about halfway through this year when things got kind of sideways for Seattle. They started hot. Things ended up having like 8 or 10 turnovers in a few games, and quote unquote Pete pulled the reins back on Russell Wilson a little bit there. Brian Schottenheimer failed to adjust. They kind of went down the stretch struggling and never really completely put it all together, and went out of the playoffs almost predictably at that point. And then the post games press conferences from Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson kind of gave a window into the thinking there. And all of this has been reported, so I'm not going to rehash a whole bunch of stuff, but it picked up a little steam when you started hearing quotes from Russell Wilson on the Dan Patrick Show and the Ellen DeGeneres Show. He's kind of out there doing some media tour type stuff, talking about his offensive line, talking about pass protection, talking about, weapons, talking about relationship with Pete a little bit. You've started hearing some tweets from Jason Lock, California. How do you pronounce it? Yeah, there you go. That Russell Wilson's camp was frustrated with the pass protection and so forth. And then it finally got to the point where the trade rumors started in earnest. And at that point, you and I were still both not convinced that this was a real deep issue. This was more superficial, talking about the offensive line, talking about protection, some of the same conversations that have had in the off seasons in prior years. And so it's just chatter at this point. But that kind of made it real, talking about some of the rumors. And then Russell Wilson's agent stepped in and said, Russell Wilson hasn't asked to be traded. The Seahawks don't want to trade him. But if they should want to trade him, here are the 4 teams that Russell Wilson would agree to go to. And that kind of blew up the entire thing. And so what are your thoughts, Keith, on just this overall overarching public pressure campaign, for lack of a better word, that Russell Wilson and his folks have decided to engage in this offseason to kind of put the Seahawks on notice, put the Seahawks into a corner, really, as far as, listen, these are the things that we need to have addressed. This is serious. I haven't been able to get my way in private. And so I'm going to go public and maximize the pressure on you guys to be able to do the things that I feel are necessary to improve the team to get to the Super Bowl. And A, is it effective? And B, what is the likely outcome?
Okay, so one, it is effective. And so you end up with all these like trade speculations and all this stuff going on. And Pete and John basically have to look at this and they're like, we can't hide from this anymore. We have to address it. And so it is effective. If nothing else, it changes, public perception and they really get, everyone ends up on the same page as far as what needs to be done.
Well, they have yet to address it publicly, and maybe
and they never will
not.
They never will. And so that's one of the things. One of the people came out and said, if you want to squash this, if you're Seattle, what you owe Russell Wilson is to come out.
I did not like that article.
To come out and say unequivocally blah blah blah, and that's not the way. I mean, that's dumb, because how many times have we heard?
They didn't generate the rumor.
Yeah. How many times though have we heard the Philadelphia Eagles come out and say, Carson Wentz is our guy, and then now he's already been traded, right? So coming out and saying anything about it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't help anybody. And for them, it's better to just ignore it and just act like it. We're not going to make this a thing by admitting its existence and actually, giving it power.
At this point, do you trust like Russell Wilson and you'll have to excuse me, Keith, I don't have Russell Wilson's agent's name on top of mind and I didn't write it down. How much do they trust him? So if they say, we're not going to do anything publicly, but man, we need to reach out to Wilson and his agent and at least let them know that we fully support, some of these ideas, and here's what we're going to do in the off season to make sure that we do it. Or they just don't say anything. They don't reach out to Wilson. They kind of let everything hang. Wilson's people are continuing to talk, but in the background, the Hawks are just kind of taking care of their business and making some of these moves happen. It started with the Waldron hire. I thought that was a great step forward. That seemed to be in conjunction with Russell Wilson's input, and then from there on out, it's just been nothing but chaos.
Well, and that's the thing, is it has been chaos. And so you have this situation where they are going back and forth, and yes, Wilson was given some input on that, but Wilson is trying to downplay his input because he wants to continue to put pressure to get the offensive line improved. And so there's a lot going on here.
And Mark Rogers is the name that I was looking for as the
there you go.
Agent.
And so anytime you read a player's camp in any article or any story or any tweet, automatically that 100% of the time that is the agent. I've seen people say, no, that's Sierra and it's Russell. No, it's not his wife. It's his agent. And the reason why agents do that is they don't want their own name in the headline. They want the player's name in the headline.
Well, so that changed a little bit this last week.
A little bit because he's got, you've seen his name in it a little bit more, but ultimately when they say it's Russell Wilson's camp, that's agent speak to, hey, reporter, I'm calling you, I'm telling you what's going on, but don't put my name in the story. Say it's Russell Wilson's camp so that his name is the thing. And agents do that. They've been doing that forever. That's a thing. La
Canfora came out earlier last week and said possible trade destinations for Wilson include the Raiders, Dolphins, Saints, and Jets among them, quote unquote. And then Thursday, Wilson's agent, this is last Thursday, told ESPN's Adam Schefter the quarterback would only consider going to the Saints, Raiders, Bears, and Cowboys as potential trade destinations. So why name names? Why? You don't see that very often, and you've got a quarterback with a non-trade clause.
A no trade clause, so he would have to waive his no trade clause.
4 teams. Now, to me, that's just an amplification device. You've literally, you had pressure, and then you just turned it up to 11 because we don't really know why. We don't know why those teams specifically, other than we can kind of speculate and guess, but it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Where do you think the foreign teams from La Canfora came from?
I don't know, because the Dolphins and the Jets have the most draft capital, so you would consider those just as being.
They have draft capital. They have salary cap space. They can take on his contract. Right. They can give Seattle what they need. So it makes sense logically on that. But where did those names come from on the floor? Because the Saints are the opposite.
Have to be. Yeah, I know.
The Saints are the opposite. They have no money. They have way over the cap already. They would have to clear a ton of cap space. They have to clear a ton of cap space anyway, and they have to clear a ton more to get Wilson on there. So. My first name comes to mind is Colin Hurd. Oh, Cowherd?
Or Cowherd for that source.
Yeah. So La Canfora is very well known in media circles for being, hey, any agent, if you want to get the word out, you call him. And so he got those 4 names from Wilson's agent. I can't guarantee that because I don't know, but it's Jason La Canfora. That's his gig, right? He is the agent's voice in the media. And then Adam Schefter is the team's voice in the media for the most part.
Well, let's go beyond.
He's the guy that teams call. So
let's
those
go beyond
4 names came from him.
Let's go beyond just the logistics of the names and so forth. Let's talk about the strategy. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Russell. There's 2 strategies here playing out. One is just the media strategy of like amplifying this at all costs. And that's kind of where it's at right now, is it's just out of control a little bit, as far as it's Russell no longer controls the narrative, and the Seahawks don't control the narrative. It's just out there now. It's all out there, and it's just going wherever it's going to go. And then, but specifically though, if you dial it back a little bit and peel back the curtain, all this was generated and purposefully thought out as a strategy by Russell Wilson and his agent, or a few other folks that are in the room or whatever. What do you think of the strategy? What is it trying to accomplish, and is it going to be successful, or are we going to end up? Is it overplayed? Did he overplay his hand, and will it possibly result in him being traded?
So, I don't think he overplayed his hand, because anytime you're a quarterback on a Hall of Fame trajectory, you have all the hand you ever want to play. He can overplay. He can do this as strongly as he wants to, and
if you're out
you
there
have all
making
the power.
All the news, and you're if you're generating all the controversy, if it's good or bad, it doesn't really matter. You have control. You are in control of the narrative, and you can pretty much get what you want to get.
Yep, and that's a reason why players like Wilson have a cap number of $32 million next year. Now, he's only making 19 next year, but all the extra money came as bonuses earlier, right? So he's already been paid that money. That's why it's 32. But the reason why quarterbacks like him get paid so much is because they have all the power. They have all the control. There are 32 teams. There's only about 20 NFL quarterbacks. And so you have to look at this as he has a ton of power. So this strategy is about, that he has asked for things in the past, right? He has gone and said, hey, I'd like, better protection. He did that privately. Last year, he came out publicly and said, I would like another weapon. I'd like something else. And they went and they got him Olsen at tight end. And they already had Metcalf, but they basically let him develop another year. They already had Lockett. They had that set up. They went and tried to get Dorsett. It didn't work out because of the injury and all of that.
Well,
but they tried.
That's what I mean by these little tepid, steps to improve that are on the margins. But here's what other teams are doing in our division right now.
Mm-hmm.
Matthew Stafford joins the Los Angeles Rams via a big trade. The salary cap hit, dead money for the Rams didn't matter. That thing went down. Yesterday, J.J. Watt, who was earlier released from the Houston Texans, signs with the Arizona Cardinals and instantly makes that team a little bit more interesting. It's a big contract, 31 million, 20-something million is guaranteed. He's got some injuries type stuff going on. Last year was less effective than years prior. So we don't know if he's hit that proverbial age cliff or not, but we'll find out. And you pair that with Chandler Jones, who last year, it went out in October, but he's a sack leader. In fact, if you add up since 2012, Jones has 97.5 sacks. Watt has 95.5 sacks, 193 combined sacks in the NFL, which is absurd. And then you add Hassan Reddick, who's there, and now he's a free agent this year, but they'd love to have him back. Had 12.5 sacks, 16 quarterback hits, 28 pressures, and 6 forced fumbles. You got those three guys on the defensive line. We already know about Aaron Donald on the defensive line and his crew there in Los Angeles. Last year, the 49ers were decimated by injury, but their defense is pretty awesome in a normal year with Bosa there. And the Seahawks have Dunlap. Dunlap is likely a cap casualty cut candidate at this point. Some in the Seattle media are speculating, and I think there has some merit to that. And so Wilson's demands carry even more weight now when you consider the additions that other teams are making to win in this ultra competitive division. Yeah, Seattle had 12 wins last year, but they seemed more like a regular season win type team. When they get to the playoffs, I think they're 1-5 in the last 5-6 playoff years. And so Seattle, it seems to me that we've reached a point. This is like a very critical point right now. We've reached a situation where Seattle must do everything that Wilson has asked and be successful at it. So they need to add the offensive line help. They need not just a guy, not Posick back at center, not just some dude that's, coming out of a wheelchair to take over Opati's spot where he's going into wheelchair retirement. You can't do that. You have to get at least some premier guys in there to form a formidable top 10 offensive line in the NFL. That's what is required. That's what Russell Wilson is asking you to do. That's really, Russell Wilson's kind of entering the stage of his career where mobility is going to be a factor. He's going to become less and less mobile as the years go forward, and that offensive line needs to be a little better at the pass blocking. And we've talked about that. It's like you can afford to do that to a certain point, and then at some point you need to kind of restructure your roster a little bit to invest more into the offensive line. We're there now, and we've talked about the tight end. Olsen's left. All we've got is Disley and a couple of unproven guys, completely unproven. And then wide receiver number 3, you mentioned who we have. And then they tried to do Dorsett. They'd like to have him back. He'd be a cheap option, but that's really all he is right now, is just some cheap option. They're just, it seems to me like maybe they would invest a little bit more money into that spot. And then the running back spot, our top 2 running backs from last year are both free agents, one of which is more than likely probably not going to return, just from a cost management perspective. And that's just the offense. And then you go to the defense. We've got the Carlos Dunlap thing. We've got to figure out the Jamal Adams thing. We've got KJ Wright's going into free agency and wants a bigger contract, or at least similar to what he had last time. He's come out and said, quote unquote, I want to take the biggest offer. And that's probably not likely Seattle. And so you've got to replace that. We've got Brooks, but there's still going to be an opening there with the linebacker group. Jamal Adams and Diggs are both on essentially 1-year contracts. Dunbar and Griffin are going to be out. So we've got this roster completely full of holes, not just holes, starter and solid contributor type guys that we need to be able to either re-sign or replace. And we have very little effective cap space right now as it stands. And we have 4 draft picks. And then we still have to fulfill Russell Wilson's mission to improve the team. And I know that Pete Carroll wants to too. He's come out and said it. I know John Schneider, that's the goal. But when you go all in for 2020 and try to win, and then you don't, and all of a sudden too, you've reached a kind of an unpredictable salary cap limitation that was put on the season that you couldn't forecast a couple of years ago when you were making these contracts. It just seems like it's too much to overcome. And I'm wondering what gives, Keith. Like, how do you see this thing going down? And then let's talk about prospects.
So I think what we can say is that Russell Wilson counts more against the cap in Seattle if they trade him than if they keep him. His cap number goes up by trading him. So I don't think they traded him this year.
Well, if they traded him, Keith, this season would be over. They would restructure, reset, rebuild, whatever you want to call it.
If they trade Wilson, they're committing to a massive rebuild.
Yes.
And so you're going to see Adams gone. You're going to see Bobby Wagner gone. You're going to see Dunlap gone. You're going to see all sorts of guys traded. They're going to get a lot of draft capital for this year and next year. They're going to build this team young. They're going to start over. They've also got a 70-year-old head coach. Okay, he's 69, but he'll be 70 next year during the season. So they have a head coach going into a year when he's 70. He is not going to rebuild. So I think we can safely say it's not going to happen. So what's going to happen is they're going to do the best they can, given the resources that they have, to put together a team to make one last run at this.
How much? Okay, so you're saying one last run. I get that, and that's coded language for they're going to mortgage the future a little bit to win in 2021.
Yeah. So they will trade. My guess is they're going to trade at least 2 2022 draft picks for 2021 in order to restock some young, cheap talent. And on top of that, they're going to restructure some guys and push a lot of money into the future as far as salary cap money into the future. Give them the money now, but push the salary cap money into the future in order to free up the space they need.
It makes things a little tenuous with some of those guys, some of those contracts. But that's kind of what you have to do. You got to have a little bit more risk for the upside potential, and you're pushing that risk out just a little bit.
Yeah, so I think you're gonna push all that stuff into next year. You're gonna gear it up for one last go at this, and if they make a run and get deep in the playoffs and win a lot of games, I got to tell you, winning fixes a lot of things. It'll fix a lot of the problems between Wilson and Pete Carroll.
Yes.
If they don't, because they're just unable to make the improvements that they need.
What is your definition of what Russell Wilson believes is winning?
They better get to the title game, NFC title game.
Yeah, I wrote that out on Twitter today. I was like, success is only going to be defined if we get to the NFC Championship game. Otherwise, it's not a successful transformation because we're exactly right back where we were.
Yep. Except a year from now, we are in a completely different salary cap situation. Even if we push a bunch of money forward with players, because the salary cap will jump back up, and Russell Wilson's dead money goes way down. And so a year from now, he is tradable. Right now, he's not. I mean, the Seahawks can't.
And he still has 2 years remaining on his deal. So any team that would get him would still find that attractive. And his salary cap would be around $19 million for 2022 and 2023. Something like that. So
for the team that's getting him.
Exactly. Yes. So that's a huge, and so you're getting a top 3 franchise quarterback in the NFL for $19 million. What?
Yeah.
So the compensation coming back is still going to be as rich or richer next year, depending. I mean, if they finish the season on high marks and Waldron is able to institute a really nice, efficient, effective offensive scheme, and Wilson kind of thrives in that, his value could be even higher next year.
Yeah, but if Wilson thrives in it and the team is successful,
why would he want to leave?
He wouldn't leave. He's not going to leave. So but that's what I mean. As I think all of this comes down to, they're going to do what
pressure is on Waldron to be successful.
A lot, a ton. But there's, that's true for every offensive coordinator making their first offensive coordinator job.
Yes.
Just look at Mike DiFilippo in.
But the spotlight is clearly on this one, though.
Yes, I know. So I was mentioning Minnesota, but in this case, I honestly think we have one more year of Pete and Russ. If they make a deep run, then we've got 3 more years of Pete and Russ. If they don't, if whatever happens this coming year fails, for whatever the reason, they barely make the playoffs, or God forbid they miss the playoffs, one of those 2 is gone. Pete might retire. If they have a losing season, if they go 6-10, can you imagine Pete Carroll at 70 committing to a 3-year rebuild again, trading Russell Wilson and all these players and all these assets to load up on youth and rebuild at 70?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's a 50-50 proposition. Pete's not a quitter. His entire life is about winning, is about overcoming achievement. I mean, he's built a complete side career outside of the Seahawks organization. as kind of a motivational speaker kind of a guy. Everything is tied to his ability to win and to be successful in transforming and transformative characters and all that kind of stuff. So his brand is tied up in this thing as well.
That's what
so
I mean. Is it him
maybe
committing at 70? Him committing to a rebuild? What happens if the
maybe
rebuild
because that would be the ultimate challenge, and you know, a guy that's like Pete doesn't easily walk away from challenge like that. And so to me, that's why it's a 50-50, is that might be a challenge he couldn't pass up, and or that might just have made him the tiredest man on the planet, and it'd be time to go.
At 70, having a losing season,
no one would blame him for stepping away.
Yeah, and for him to take on that rebuild, unless you come out of it at the end winning, you've destroyed your brand.
So there's only one option.
They have to win.
2021.
They better win.
They got to go. They got to pour every resource they have into every position group, and win the talent battle going into the season. Now, if they lose because, you know, of injuries, or, you know, the ball bounced off the uprights because Jason Myers missed a field goal or whatever, I think people can sometimes live with that. But if you don't do everything that you could have done to build a roster before the season starts, that'll be one check already against the team before the season even begins. So I don't think they want to start that way. I think you're right. I think they invest, they do whatever they need to do to push contracts out, to dump money into next year. Next year, you know, the salary cap is projected to be at like what, 225 or 240 or something like that.
I thought it was lower next year. It was like 212, and then it jumps to like 242.
It would have been 212 had the salary cap gone up this year as scheduled.
Yeah, and so then next year it was
supposed to be 225 or something like that.
Yeah, but then with this year going down, I thought I saw that 212 was the new expectation.
The thing that still might make it 225 is the TV contracts, and
I know
we haven't even started yet on that.
And the it's disputed on whether or not it's true or not. But apparently Disney and the NFL did come to an agreement that's close to double. And then
they did. They reached a $2 billion or $4 billion deal or whatever. It's twice as big as it was before, and that's for ESPN and ABC, Disney, Monday Night Football, all that kind of stuff is tied into that. That's just that portion of the media contract. That's not the Fox and CBS portion of the deal as well. Those are yet to come. The DirecTV thing where they've got the ownership of all of that is yet to be negotiated as well. So
I hope that goes away.
I do too, believe me. My wife is kicking my butt all the time because I got to have DirecTV in an out-of-market city.
Yeah, the DirecTV deal is, I understand it from an NFL point of view. It's a lot of money just for them to have exclusive rights to
hopefully
NFL.
they can
for us,
bundle,
for me and you, it's
a consumer.
terrible.
Yeah, for a consumer, it's horrible. I'm hoping that they can bundle a package, a TV exclusive TV national package where you can order specific teams, that sort of a thing, as well as streaming, and put that into a deal where fans anywhere, you know, if you live in Barcelona, you can watch live football. I think you should be able to do that. All right. So
let's talk prospects.
Yeah, the takeaway for the Russell Wilson thing is this is a planned strategy to maximize public pressure on the team to win right now, and give him all the tools necessary to be successful so that he has his legacy. So this isn't Russell Wilson trying to force a trade. The team doesn't want to trade him. Russell doesn't want to be traded. Likely ends up playing out the contract. That's probably the likely end game on this whole thing. And the Seahawks improve, and we just keep going. You know, there's when all this happens, though, there is a chance then it goes sideways, and anything can happen. So, okay, prospects, Keith. Today we're talking about the 2021 NFL draft. Comes in April. We're looking at position groups. We're going to go through all the position groups as the shows progress. And this week we start with quarterbacks and running backs. And when I made up my notes, and I did this earlier this week and a bit last week, I've kind of been building my film watching and note taking and so forth for a while now to try to, because it's a long process. And so when I started this, I had no idea that maybe Russ could be traded and what would bring value back to the team. And that, well, you get a couple first round picks next year, a first round pick, maybe a second or a third. So that could completely change the dynamic of the draft. Right now we have 4 picks in the draft. The earliest pick is like 56 in the second round overall. And so it's not great draft capital right now, but I would imagine those things will change a little bit. I don't know if it's going to change incorporating a couple of first round picks and all that, but there are a few guys at the top of the draft for quarterbacks that I think it's just worthy of mentioning. There's like, to me, Keith, there's at least 5 quarterbacks that go in the first round. And there's 4 quarterbacks that could potentially go in the top 10. And each one of those quarterbacks, and I look at them, they each have attributes that I really like. Like Trevor Lawrence is just kind of a one of those guarantee things, like an Andrew Luck. Remember Andrew Luck it's kind of a similar situation.
So take Andrew Luck and add true athleticism.
Yes, exactly.
To go with it. I mean, Trevor Lawrence isn't just this like name that's thrown out there because he's, Clemson and whatnot. No, this is, if you're looking at,
he's at the highest level.
If you're looking at quarterback prospects, you're looking at him, and then the next guy that comes into mind as being that quality would be John Elway.
Yeah. It's funny. I was having this exact same conversation with the guy yesterday at the ballpark in Peoria at the ball game. We were talking about John Elway because he was from Denver, and I was like, "Oh, I hate that guy," and that's because I love that. I love and respect that guy so much. I hate him. What he was able to do on the field, and he's not a great. I'll just say it. He's not a tremendous human being as far as the way that he treats other people and so forth. He's got kind of a bad reputation, but as a football player, he was a Seahawks killer for a long time.
Oh, he was.
He killed every other team in the NFL. Okay, so Trevor Lawrence is up there at the top, the undisputed number 1 pick in this, clear number 1 overall.
There's nobody close.
And he's just a big-bodied pocket guy that can actually move in space and dodge some traffic, and he's just a really nice prospect. I think he's going to have a great career. After that, there's 2 or 3 guys that are kind of boom, boom, boom. Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, and Trey Lance. Zach Wilson kind of came on as kind of a sudden guy, didn't really perform
out of BYU
well in 2019, but in 2020, BYU quarterback ran a 4.44 40 at a pro day that he participated in last year. 6'3", 210, kind of throws it all over the place. Kind of a Russell Wilson kind of guy. When you watch him on film, he kind of moves the same way. He dodges, gets underneath guys rushing him, and throws on the run really well, off balance, that sort of a guy. He'd be a fine prospect. He's kind of a one-year wonder for me, so I'm not sure.
I really like Zach Wilson. I think if the Seahawks do trade Russell Wilson, and they trade him,
go for another Wilson.
And well, that's true. I didn't even think about that. And they trade him more for a like to the Jets at number 2
or number 3, then people wouldn't even have to buy new jerseys.
That's a good point. It would say Wilson would be number 3. Perfect. So
I'm completely kidding. I think Russell Wilson's going to end up being on the.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I'm just saying that if Seattle did that, Zach Wilson to me is clearly the number 2, the quarterback in this field, and I think he is going to have a very good career. I know he's not Trevor Lawrence, right?
Yeah, he has 33 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, 70 carries for 250 yards, 10 touchdowns. Yeah, I mean, he's a great little prospect, but I like a couple other guys just slightly better.
Really?
I think Wilson, Wilson's, I mean, it's hard to go with a 1-year guy.
Yeah, so you don't like the 1-year wonder.
Yeah, it makes me skeptical a little bit. Plus playing
like
at BYU.
Justin Fields. Yeah, you like Justin Fields more, don't you?
Justin Fields is an amazing prospect, Keith.
Yeah, he is. He really is. 6'3", 223.
I went into this process honest to God. I didn't watch a lot of college football. I have time enough during the season to watch pro football and one team, and I focus and then I kind of catch up after the year, and I watch a lot of film, and I study, and I read all the analyst reports about, you know, all their attributes and all that kind of stuff, the measurables, and I catch up, and this last couple of weeks I've caught up on the quarterback class, and Justin Fields, dude, is unreal. 6'3", 223, runs a 4.5, and he's just got that throwing ability, that athleticism, the stature, the clutch play. He can make any throw. And the velocity on his ball is really nice. He doesn't have as much accuracy as, say, a Mac Jones. Nobody does in this class, except for Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence kind of got the whole package. But Justin Fields needs to work on his accuracy a little bit. But every other intangible he has, the leadership, the throwing, the way that he throws as far as his arm strength and the ability to throw on with balance and get away from pressure and extend the field with his legs and all that kind of stuff. He's going to be the perfect quarterback in a Shane Waldron system, like the hybrid spread West Coast offense with some power running and some wide zone. This guy,
he is a great fit for Seattle.
Justin Fields would make that offense. Now, Russell Wilson is a great quarterback in that system as well, for the same sort of attributes. It's just that a Justin Fields is just that much more athletic and big and young. He's just got the young legs, and so it'd just be amazing.
I'll tell you, looking at Justin Fields and watching some of his tape. One of the things that came to mind when I was watching him throw. Now he's more athletic and better on the run, but watching him throw, it made me think of Jameis Winston, who has all these touchdowns, but also all those interceptions.
Yes, right.
And so there's a little bit there
because he has overconfidence in his arm.
Yeah,
his arm's amazing.
His arm,
but in the NFL, the speed will kill you.
And that was the reason why I had Zach Wilson ahead of Justin Fields. I worry that he's going to struggle a little bit his first couple of years as he adapts to the speed of the defenders.
You know what? I was thinking, and people aren't going to agree with me on this because they might have Mac Jones, picked in the 20s or whatever. But Mac Jones is the safer choice for NFL teams than Justin Fields.
Here's the thing about Mac Jones. Jones
he's like
he's a statue.
Smith. He's like, remember Smith from Utah? He broke his leg. He played for Washington.
Yeah, Alex Smith.
He's like Alex Smith.
Now, Alex Smith at least had some athleticism. Mac Jones is a statue. He's a really good statue. I mean, he's got great arm talent, incredible accuracy, just incredible accuracy.
He's a game manager, on steroids. He's a perfect game manager in the NFL.
He is
like at San Francisco. Like Mac Jones would be perfect in San Francisco.
Oh man, if he goes to San Francisco, he'd be such an upgrade over Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yes, totally.
Because he's more accurate, but he is a statue. He doesn't have that athleticism. And in Seattle, look at when Seattle's at its best, it's because Russell Wilson is doing Russell Wilson things, right? He's stretching the field. He's extending plays. He's giving his wide receivers an opportunity. Mac Jones is never going to do that. That's not who he is. He's.
Yeah, but that Senior Bowl performance in practice week. Now he didn't play, but in the game, but the practice showed everybody that this guy was super, super accurate and
Mhm.
could command an offense
He
and
is
the huddle.
he's going to remind people of Peyton Manning. Now I don't know if he'll ever. I mean, Peyton Manning is a Hall of Famer
Peyton
and
Manning had some
extraordinary.
serious arm strength, though, dude.
He really
Mac Jones doesn't have the arm strength.
no.
Now, Mac
Peyton,
Jones can make the 50-yard throw, but Mac Jones makes that 50-yard throw not because of the arm strength, but
but
because of the
because of the touch,
anticipation.
yeah. Peyton Manning didn't have a great arm as far as arm strength. He had a good arm, but not a great one. And I think Zach Williams is comparable. What made Peyton Manning great was his just football IQ and his ability to be the offensive coordinator.
Who's Zach Williams? You just said Zach Williams. So you combined Zach Wilson's name with Mac Jones.
No, I mean, I'm talking about Zach Wilson. Or sorry, Mac Jones. I'm talking about Mac Jones.
Yes, I knew.
So
I was teasing.
So he reminds me of he's a Peyton Manning type, right? Very super accurate, not a cannon for an arm, but way more than adequate. But super, super accurate.
And a leader.
And yeah, and I think he's going to have a fantastic career. I just think he is not a fit for Seattle.
Yes.
Because
agreed.
He doesn't have the mobility to survive.
But
in this offense.
But you adjust. I mean, if you end up with a quarterback like Mac Jones, you
change your offense.
Exactly. Yeah. You fix it. Trey Lance is the other guy at the top, not just the other guy. He's one of the main guys. I mean, he's got his own special, unique quality. But he played in a small school and he played against lower level competition. And you wanted to see a guy like that maybe have a chance to go play at the Senior Bowl so you could see him against high level competition, but he's only a redshirt sophomore.
Mm-hmm. He's
so he
young,
wouldn't be able to do it. Yeah, he's young. He's 6'3", 223. He's got the size, speed, athleticism, arm strength to make all the throws, and he runs the ball from all over the place, and especially the short yardage stuff. He can kind of break away a little bit. He doesn't have special speed. It's like 4.6. It's like a Russell Wilson coming out of college speed. It's good enough.
Mm-hmm.
But
at 6'3", 224, he can
pick up first downs.
He can pick up a first down on 3rd and 1. Like, you can quarterback sneak him and know you're going to get it. Right. I will say with him, of the top 5, because to me there's we've talked about 4 of the 5. Trey Lance is the 5th. He's the 5th best of these 5.
Yes,
he has,
and I think the talent evaluators in the NFL will see it almost the same way, because Mac Jones has the intangibles that will lead your team. Trey Lance has the upside that you.
That's the thing. He has the upside. He has the ceiling. I think Trey Lance has the ability to be the 2nd best in this group behind Trevor Lawrence, but he has the lowest floor of those 5.
I agree. Perfect.
And so.
All right, so let's talk about some guys that's if we didn't trade Russell Wilson, which is not going to happen, and we didn't really trade anybody of any consequence to pick up early picks, but we had some extra round, 4 to 7 type guys. Are there guys that are out there at all that you would be interested in seeing develop behind Russell Wilson?
The only one that I've looked at that I like is Jamie Newman out of Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
This guy
is interesting.
This guy is toolsy. He's got size at 6'3", 235.
People probably haven't even heard of Jamie Newman because he opted out of 2020 and the COVID thing. So he started out at Wake Forest, and then he was going to transfer this year to Georgia, and everyone was kind of excited to see him in a bigger offense and a bigger school to be able to see what he could do, and he never got that opportunity. So everyone's kind of looking at his old Wake Forest film, kind of trying to project where he's going to go, what he can do, when he has the opportunity. And somebody's going to have to take a chance on a guy like Jamie Newman.
And honestly,
he could be available like in the 5th or 6th round.
Yeah, and that's where I think he's going to go. But I think he's a guy with all the tools. He's got the arm, he's got the athleticism, he's got the size. He actually has some pretty dang good tape at Wake Forest, despite having not a lot of talent around him and being, basically being out-talented by the defenses that he played. I think he is a guy that
Pro Football Focus had him as their 3rd-ranked prospect going into the 2020 season, had he elected to play at Georgia behind only Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. So he was beginning to kind of be recognized. If he went on to play like a Kyle Trask, he started at a smaller school and ended up at Florida, allowed him to kind of showcase his ability. And Kyle Trask's probably going to end up going in like the second round or whatever. He's not a quarterback that he's kind of a slinger kind of a guy, a playmaker, doesn't operate in like a constructed system very well. But a guy like Jamie Newman, you can mold. He's a guy that doesn't have a lot of experience, but he played in that up-tempo kind of run-pass option thing at Wake Forest, and he was going to get a little bit more structure at Georgia. And so you don't know exactly where that's going to go. So it might have flipped his standing a little bit in this draft from maybe a day 2 prospect potentially to now a day 3 guy that you're going to have to probably develop and keep on your as your second or third quarterback on
but
your
really,
roster
for me, he's the only guy out of that top 5 that I would look at. And this is a guy that you're taking in the 5th or 6th round, knowing that he's going to be as your backup for at least a year, if not 2, and then maybe get a chance to play because he's got the talent, he's got all the tools, but you've got to develop him.
The other guy was Davis Mills from Stanford.
Yeah.
6'4", 225. He just hasn't had enough experience. I think he's got 10 games at the college level.
I think he's a backup at the NFL level.
It's possible. Yeah. It's possible, but he does have the tools. He has the tools. He would just have to develop, and you just don't know. There's just not enough film with the 2020 the way it went, and with at Stanford, they're predominantly a run team, and then they throw a lot to their tight ends. So you're not seeing your quarterback completely dynamic like you would in the SEC or whatever. All right, quarterbacks. I've always said that Seattle should draft a guy to develop. Not a late round guy like Mago. But a guy, in the 3rd, 4th round that you could really kind of see potentially as somebody that you could have take over or at least turn around and pick up a draft pick for at a later point.
Yeah. And that's what I like about Newman, is I think he's a guy that you can draft in the 5th or 6th round and develop, let him show in the preseason and really show.
Yes.
And then you either have a guy, because the time with Wilson is leaving, and you have, okay, we're going to commit to him as our guy going forward, or you trade him because he shows so well in the preseason. Someone's like, wow, let's give up something to get him, because it's basically the Jimmy Garoppolo situation in New England.
Somebody flip you a late round, 1st round pick or early 2nd, you take that.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So running backs. There's a couple of running backs in this draft that would be perfect fits for Seattle, and they're going to probably be gone. So with Najee Harris and Javonte Williams, and then Travis Etienne, I think. Those guys are going to be off the board. I can't help you with the
pronunciation of that one.
He's Travis is more of a guy, a change of pace back. He's not one of those bell cow guys that Pete Carroll really likes to have as your back. And if you're going to go out and spend a early or mid 1st round pick on a guy, it's probably not going to be that guy. But you never know with Shane Waldron's offense and the stretch zone, they might be looking for a few different attributes than we've become accustomed to. So, but those guys are going to definitely be off the board. Najee Harris this year had a great year. I think he would be a terrific fit in a Seahawks uniform at 6'2", 230, but again, likely off the board. He just does too much. He can run between the tackles for you. He can get outside with his speed, and he can catch the ball out of the backfield. One of the best ball catchers.
He's so big.
Yeah,
he's so big. He's so hard to take down. He's basically
6'2". Seattle might not even like that, because he might run too upright for the Seahawks and so forth. You just never know. But Javonte Williams, Keith, to me,
that's the guy I'd want.
Prototype for Seattle. 5'10". They like a guy between 5'10" and 6 foot. 5'11" seems to be their perfect guy, but 5'10's just right. 220 pounds, runs with physicality and authority, doesn't like to step out of bounds. He likes to get the extra hit, just like Chris Carson. This guy's, violent in the running style that runs hard, likes to punch you. He's got great balance. He's elusive. He's got enough of that burst. He's one of the leaders in all of college football in breaking tackles. Number 1 ranked in missed tackles forced, number 4 overall in yards after contact, number 2 in carries of 15 plus yards. So not only does he have all the balance and he's going to make you miss and he's going to break tackles, he can break the big ones too. So the guy brings the entire package, and he's likely just going to go before the Seahawks have a chance to pick. The only way that they would have a chance, I think, at Javonte Williams is if somehow he fell in the draft, other positions of need became a priority for teams in front of us, and he was just sitting there. And
I can't expect him to be there
it's
in the
hard
50s.
it's hard to imagine, right? And so the only way Seattle will be able to do that is if they picked up additional draft capital that we can't predict right now, either an earlier pick or a combination of a couple picks where they can move up and get a guy like that. Of course, everyone would crucify them in Seattle for picking a running back first, but at least it wouldn't be in the first round.
It would still be Pete Carroll, and so it's a possibility. I mean, you look at with Chris Carson,
fall in love with the guy.
With Chris Carson gone and Carlos Hyde gone, and so you're stuck with Penny and a bunch of who knows. And it's Pete Carroll, and Pete Carroll, is going to value the running back position more than most teams.
And he literally said that is going to be the focus of the offseason.
Yeah, and so I could see if Javonte Williams drops, or if Seattle that makes a trade and has more draft capital, to use it on him if he's available. To me, he's the best running back in the draft.
I agree. He's the most complete running back.
Now, Najee Harris is going to get a lot because of the Travis Henry comps. The people are gonna say that he looks very similar, and you look at what Henry's done the last couple of years. People are getting excited about that. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Travis Etienne, is that right? Something like that. He's gonna show you the Alvin Kamara style, where he's great out of the backfield, good at catching the ball, does a lot of things, can run the ball well, a home run hitter.
He would fit well in a Waldron offense that uses the stretch principles more.
Oh, and I'm not talking. This is a guy who's probably going to get a first round pick now,
yes,
later first round pick, but still a first round pick as a running back. So let's not say anything. I'm not saying anything negative like, oh, he's terrible. No, he's a fantastic player, but he's more in the Alvin Kamara role, and I don't think that fits Seattle's prototype. Even though he would do well in a Shane Waldron offense, I don't think Pete Carroll and John Snyder would agree.
He wants to smash you in the mouth, and Waldron's going to design some runs around that. He's going to have the Penny there to be able to take some of those outside reads and one cut type stuff, and so, he's still going to want his animal to be able to run between the tackles. It just is.
And so Najee Harris with that Travis Henry comp is going to have Pete Carroll like drooling over wanting that.
Sure.
But ultimately, Javonte Williams is the best back of the three. He's the most complete. He can do all the different things that both the other two guys can do. I think if he is available in the 50s when Seattle's picking,
it's going to be hard to pass.
It's going to be hard to pass because
I know John's going to want to trade out of that pick a little bit to at least pick up another third or fourth round pick.
And fans will hate it because they do not want the team to use a running back, but it's still Pete Carroll and it's still a damn good player.
I would be dancing. I mean, I think Rob Staten was on the show a few weeks back and said if they made that pick, he'd be dancing. And he said, no, literally, I'll be dancing. And I'm kind of feeling the same way. All right, Keith. Talk to me about some consolation prizes here for Seattle. If Seattle doesn't pick a running back, say they go offensive lineman, I think everyone kind of expects maybe offensive line would be addressed
and
with
a
that second round pick. And then they don't have a third currently. They next pick in the 4th and 5th and 7th round. 4th, 5th, 7th round. Give me some names that you think Seattle would be looking at that would still kind of fit the prototypical back that Seattle likes.
Okay, so I'll straight up and say that there's a bunch of backs out there that play for little schools that I don't know. So I look at other people's rankings at guys like Rakeem Boyd at Arkansas, and I go, yeah, he's big enough and whatnot. But I honestly
like
know
the explosiveness.
Well, the thing is, I have actually I have not seen Arkansas play, so I don't want to comment. So there's probably guys, and if they take someone, I'm sure it's going to be someone I don't know.
Well, like Elijah Mitchell, Elijah Mitchell looks like the perfect prototypical fit. But he played for Louisiana, in the Sun Belt conference, and a guy like that is going to get passed over a little bit. He's physical, he's got power, he's got the footwork, and the consistent production, but he did it in a small school. It's going to take a special evaluator to understand if that guy's going to translate into the NFL.
So for me, when I'm looking at this, and you said ask for some names, the first name that comes to mind is Trey Sermon, out of Ohio State.
Kind of right in that next tier of backs.
He's 6 foot 213. I think. Let me look. I think CBS had him ranked about 150, so that puts him at the end of the 4th round, or early 5th round kind of situation. If that's Rob Rang and company over there, and they have a really good track
this is
record.
a possibility for Seattle in the 4th round. Seattle picks towards the back of the 4th round. I think they're picked 155, maybe. This guy would be, if he's there, and we've already addressed the offensive line need and maybe a wide receiver or something like that. A guy like Trey Sermon would be a great fit, a good value at that spot. 6 foot 213. He's like physical,
very physical, power running back.
Work well in a West Coast type system. He's tough. He's a tough runner. The knock a little bit with him was he had to share the load with a couple other backs there over time, and really only emerged halfway through the 2020 season, where he kind of took a step above those other guys and performed really well, and then did really well in his bowl game too. So
I think the other thing with him that's going to be a knock for him, and the reason why he's going to drop, is he doesn't do a lot of the stuff out of the backfield as a running. It's just not in his tape. And so people are going to view him the way the Seahawks viewed Chris Carson, and that's a 1st and 2nd down running back, a guy who's going to, be that feature back, but come off the field in the 3rd and long, and you have to bring
at least
in
initially,
at least initially, and you have to bring in someone else, whether that ends up being DJ Dallas or one of the other guys in the roster. In Seattle, you're going to bring someone else in on 3rd and long. You're going to pull him off the field. And so I think that will drop him down a little bit. But that was what the Seahawks did with Marshawn Lynch, of all people, right? He was not the guy who was in there in the 2-minute drill, right? So they would pull him off the field in certain situations and bring in someone who's a little better in the passing game. I don't think that's going to be like a major problem. And Chris Carson is the same way. So I think it's someone the Seahawks will look at and be like, this is a guy we can grind out 1st downs with, and really like him. And like I said, if you can get him in the late 4, early 5, somewhere in there, and get a guy with that kind of skill, that's like getting Chris Carson in the 7th. It's not quite as good as getting Chris Carson in the 7th, but it's the same kind of beat. It's a later round pick.
It's a perfect comp, really, to Chris Carson, and the way that you laid that out as far as being an early down kind of back. That's really what he's going to be early on in his career.
He's also a little taller at 6 foot, runs a little upright, doesn't have the ball security problems that Chris Carson did coming out of college.
And he's lightly used so far. He's never had more than 200 carries in a season.
Yeah,
and so he's got a lot of life left in him, and so that's what you're looking for.
If Carson ends up signing elsewhere, I could see them going with a guy like Sermon. Now, I'm just looking at lists of stuff, and there's Kylan Hill out of Mississippi State. I know nothing about him, but you know what? He seems to fit Seattle's profile too. But I'm looking at comment on
that. He's actually a little underrated. They've got him as kind of an attitude problem a little bit there, and wanted to move around colleges a little bit. But he's a guy that if Seattle interviews him or determines that he would be a cultural fit in Seattle, I would have no problem with the Seahawks drafting him in the 4th or 5th round, because I think he'd be an excellent value at that point. And he's a tackle breaker guy. He would be going a little bit higher just based on talent, but he's got to figure out if he wants to really play football and all that kind of stuff. But he's got the gift. He's
I
really
just don't
does.
like. I just don't like commenting on guys that I haven't seen play real well, and so I'm going on someone else's recommendation.
Okay. Well, a couple of guys I watched,
at least
I watched, was Chubba Hubbard, and folks have kind of heard about him when he was a junior or when he was a sophomore. He ran for over 2,000 yards at Oklahoma State. I mean, and this guy is super dynamic. Now he dropped off a little bit in the 20 season. He's 6 foot 207, slightly under what Seattle likes. But the thing about Hubbard is he would be an ideal fit in that stretch outside zone scheme that Waldron wants to run. So if you take a look at like not Cam Akers with the Rams, but if you take a look at Henderson, this guy kind of comps to Henderson, but with more speed. So Chubba Hubbard, once he gets outside the tackles, can really be dynamic for you, and also receives the ball out of the backfield pretty well. But he lacks the ability to break the tackles. He's not quite as physical as some of the other guys we're talking about, but he's very fast and quick. So if you need a back, or if you want a back like that in your system to kind of complement your bell cow kind of guy, they might consider that. So it depends. His pick would kind of depend on if they solved the running between the tackles, running back thing in free agency. If they did, they might be looking for another guy. If they're not real sure about Dallas or Homer, specifically Homer, they might decide to upgrade, that sort of a thing. Another guy I looked at, a couple other guys, Michael Carter kind of fits the same mold as Chubba Hubbard. Michael Carter's probably going to go, early in the draft, like, mid to late second round. Ramondre Stevenson, sorry.
Out of Oklahoma.
He was at the Senior Bowl. I was not impressed. I had written his name down early, did some study. I really liked him. Watched him fairly closely at the Senior Bowl. He didn't have a lot of carries, or I think like 4 carries, but he just lacked explosiveness. And you would think he would be all about that at almost 6 foot, 5'11 and a half, 227 pounds. Actually, during the year, he was up into the 240 range. He dropped some weight for the Senior Bowl, but he still didn't look explosive at all. Didn't really inflict damage when he made contact, didn't break any tackles, kind of fell down after contact, so lacked the balance. So I think that even though he has the kind of this intriguing size thing going for him, I think Seattle would shy away from a guy like that.
Well, if they're going to go, if they're going to look at guys in that kind of range, I would rather see them look at Chris Evans out of Michigan, right?
Nice.
5'11", 216. And this is a guy that didn't play in 2019 because of an injury, and he kind of got stuck in a committee in 2020, and so you haven't really seen a lot of him since 2018. But in 2018, he was a dominant.
He was
player.
On everybody's watch list.
He was on.
He has that physical profile.
Oh yeah.
And all of a sudden he dropped off, and he lacks the production now, and nobody. He's a big question mark.
Yeah,
but Chris Evans is definitely a name, Keith.
He's a name, but like I said, he's physical. He does all the little things. He's got every tool you'd want out of a running back. His ability to break tackles, to make people miss, to drag people if he has to. He does all that stuff is in his 2018 tape, but it's been 2 years because he didn't play in 2019, and 2020 was kind of a thing. It was just there. So if you're going to take a guy, I mean, this is a guy that what are you getting? Well, if you get the 2018 version of him, you have an absolute star. And if you don't, or if that injury in 2019 was worse than perhaps people think it is, and that's why his 2020 was kind of like, well, then you just wasted a pick. But the upside, right? It's lower floor but higher ceiling. You have the potential to getting a guy that's just that has star potential at that running back position, and I think. Yeah, right. That would be a guy I'd love to see.
It's intriguing. Another guy that really intrigues me is Jamar Jefferson out of Oregon State. Not a lot of folks have talked about him. He's a little really on the small side at 5'9", but he weighs 215, so he's kind of a wrecking ball kind of guy, and he's got enough speed and shiftiness to get outside for you. That's just a name to watch. I've seen a lot of projections all over the place for him. Some folks have him in the 7th round or undrafted. Other folks are taking him at the top of the 4th round. So I'm not exactly sure where he's valued at right now. But teams, I think, in that spot where there are limited choices in this draft. I mean, we're really talking about all the guys that are going to be available, through all the rounds that would kind of fit the profile. There's a lot of smaller guys, and like you said, some guys from smaller schools. Those guys are going to go later, or undrafted, and maybe we could go there for a look. But if you want somebody that's actually going to have an impact this next year, you're going to have to probably get a guy at least by round 5.
Well,
one of those. Go ahead.
I would say if you want a guy, we keep comparing a lot of different people to Chris Carson, who was a 7th round pick in Seattle. Can I give you a 7th round pick that I think has the potential? And then I'm going to
come back to one of the guys I mentioned briefly.
Has the potential to follow Chris Carson's career, and that's starting out as a 7th round pick, but earning a spot and then showing that he can be there. Guy that no one really ever talks about, and that's I think it's Jared, or it could be Gurrid Dokes out of Cincinnati.
Yeah, I haven't even heard the name, Keith. I'll be honest.
So he's 6'1", 225. So he's a little tall, but
I like the size though.
This guy runs angry and just runs people over. Just guys, you don't want to.
Where's he at?
Cincinnati.
What name is it? I got to write this down.
Dokes. Doaks. This guy just freaking runs angry. He runs over people. He's the guy that when he gets the ball, you see linebackers that just don't want to tackle him. Right? They just don't want to go near him because he will run people over. He runs with just tremendous attitude and power and runs people over, runs between the tackles. The reason why he's not thought of higher is that he missed 3 games in 2017 due to injury. He missed all of 2018 due to injury. He missed 2 games in 2019 due to injury. And then at Cincinnati, they had a shorter season this year because of COVID. They didn't play as many games. So He's never had.
He did not draw the long straw.
Yeah, he is a guy that. But look at Chris Carson.
Yes.
In college, he never played a full season. He never had a full 10-game season where he played every game or anything like that.
What were the injuries? Do you know?
I don't.
I mean, it sounds like if he missed, some of the 17 and all of 18, but probably like an ACL.
Probably an ACL, and that's just a guess. But I mean, he's big. One of the things I liked about him is for his size at 225. He shows more quickness and agility than you'd expect from a guy that size. And if he can't run around you, he'll run through you and get yards. I like his game.
It's easy to fall in love with a guy like that and root for a guy that's got to climb from the bottom.
Yeah, I think
that's why everyone loves Chris Carson too.
It is. I think Dokes' game translates really well to the NFL if he can stay healthy. And that's why I think he's going to be like a 6th or 7th round pick, because if he can stay healthy is such a big if for him, as it was for Chris Carson when he came out, which is why Chris Carson was a 7th round pick, and he's shown that he hasn't been able to necessarily stay healthy in the pros either. But when he is healthy, when he is out there, he's such a difference maker.
Yeah,
and I think Dokes has the same way to do it.
My late round guy or undrafted guy is the Elijah Mitchell that I mentioned earlier. Louisiana senior, 5'10", 215 pounds out of the Sun Belt Conference. Physical, power, footwork, burst, consistent throughout 3 years of production. Kind of a slasher style back, even at that size. So the good blend of size and short area quickness, the contact balance. But he ran in a system where they featured 3 running backs. And so he was just a guy. He wasn't the guy. And but he's big enough that he can drop his shoulder and pick up the extra yards as well. The interesting tidbit about him is that and this was listed as kind of a drawback for him, that I think could be an attribute for the Seahawks. His offense called upon a lot of jet motion and zone read stuff from a pretty athletic quarterback. And in college, when you do that, it's kind of it's a gimmick offense, where you're asking your linebackers, especially to read the football a lot, and a good quarterback can disguise that. And when you feature a good running quarterback, you take a lot of the attention off the running back and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, he was in that sort of a system, and not where, you had to face a lot of loaded boxes and stuff. You stretch the defense out a lot. Well, guess what the Seahawks are going to do? They're going to do some of that. They're going to do some zone reads. They have an athletic quarterback that's going to be able to call some plays that features a lot of jet motion.
Mm-hmm. There'd be a lot of bootlegs and stuff like that.
Played in a system like that could be a very attractive option for Seattle in like a 7th round throwaway pick. Say a flyer on a guy that has all of the athletic attributes that you like, that played in a system that he could be familiar with, and you could find some success there.
Have you looked at Caleb Hunley out of Ball State at all?
No.
6 foot, 226 pounds. Big physical guy, runs hard, but I haven't studied him enough that I feel comfortable really jumping in and
I'll be honest, I didn't study a lot of late guys, just the couple of guys I mentioned.
Yeah, and that's the thing with me is I looked at a couple of guys. Dokes was one of them, and when I started watching him, I'm like, ooh, I think there's something here. And so I kind of got excited about him. But
would he be kind of an undrafted flyer guy?
No, I think he's going to be. I think I would spend a draft pick on him. I think he's a 6th, 7th round pick, late 6, early 7 type of situation. But it's a late round situation. If he goes before that, I mean, someone looked and saw what I saw.
With Seattle this year, Seattle doesn't have 9 picks or 11 picks like we're accustomed to, right? They've got 4 picks right now, and it's going to be hard for them to get back even to 7. So they've got to be really constructive, really efficient with the picks that they do have. So you're not going to want to waste picks. The place where you're going to want to waste stuff is going to be in the undrafted free agency stuff, which I imagine they'll try to take full advantage of this year. But with that said, I don't know where you expect them to draft a running back this year just because of the Chris Carson and Carlos Hyde situation, but they may well have solved the issue in free agency. We just don't know. But without the money to spend as well, it's hard to predict these things. So you kind of plan for everything. I would love to be in the Seahawks organization this year working under John Schneider, because he's got those guys working full time at every level, like free agency. He's looking for deals. He's looking for guys that he could have on minimum salary that can still give you a lot of upside. He's looking at the draft, all 7 rounds, and then he's going beyond that to look for guys that he's already probably calling, to say, hey, listen, if you're not in the draft, don't worry. We're looking at you. So it's a crazy year. So
okay, I'm gonna throw out one more name.
Okay.
I know we're running along, but it is because we're doing running backs, and when you do running backs, fullbacks kind of fall into that. And I know fullbacks, they're not really a thing in 2021 anymore, right? But when I was watching Evans at Michigan and trying to get a feel for that, and then I went ahead and watched some more recent ones, just specifically to get a view of Ben Mason out of Michigan. This is a guy who is 256 pounds. He's a fullback. He is a lead blocker, a short yardage specialist. Also plays special teams very well and makes an impact, and will line up at tight end and be an inline blocker or a guy that can go out.
That's why I really like Tommy Tremble out of Notre Dame in the tight end class, and we'll talk about that in a few weeks. But he's kind of that, only the reverse. He's a tight end first, but he can
drop back and play that fullback spot too. Exactly. And that's where I saw Ben Mason is like, it gives him a fullback who can actually be a fullback, unlike what they've currently got on the roster, which is a fullback who's just a special teams guy.
Yeah.
This
and
is
we've talked about that. If you're going to spend a roster spot on a guy, you might as well have the best, most athletic guy that can actually play a position for you, not just special teams, but a position, if and contribute, because those roster spots are pretty precious to a team.
Yep.
But anyway,
so you're talking about an undrafted free agent type of guy. He's a fullback. He's kind of a tight end, but he's more of a fullback. Special teams standout. What could go wrong? I'd love to see them pick up Ben Mason out of Michigan as an undrafted guy.
I like it. I mean, that's a when you're picking at the end, or you're picking up an undrafted guy, you're really looking at at kind of jack of all trades guy or a specialist. It's either one of the other. They can either do everything, or they're going to do one thing really well. And so a guy like that is valuable. They could play 3 different spots for you: special teams, fullback, tight end. I like it. Okay, so today we did running backs and quarterbacks. And we had a major discussion about the future of our franchise. So good show overall. Thanks, Keith.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was looking forward to the whole Russell Wilson conversation, because I was thinking that maybe we should get on and record kind of a special show just for that. Right after this kind of stuff went down, and we kind of waited, and I'm glad we waited, because
I'm glad that we waited. I'm glad that we waited. We kind of let this thing, mellow, because the initial response was like, "Oh my God, they're gonna have to trade him. He's gone," and people were starting to speculate, like, what could you get in response and all of that.
Right,
I think
right.
You and I had some texts about what it would take to get Russell Wilson off of Seattle, and I think I had a pretty good idea with the Raiders and after they traded Carr, and then multiple 1s and multiple 2s and whatever, and then after it sat for a couple of days, it was more like, okay, we get that things aren't perfect, but ultimately those 3 guys of Schneider, Carroll, and Wilson will get together and realize that they're better off
together.
They're better off together than apart.
Yes.
And that they depend on each other, and they'll figure out a way to make it work.
Yeah,
and I
because
think that
Seattle's never shied away from trying to be better, to try to get to the Super Bowl. That's always been the legit goal, and it's not like they're faking it until they make it. They really do want to get there. Pete wants to get there. Russell wants to get there. Shiner's trying to build the roster and do everything he can with some limitations in place and so forth. And so everyone's kind of focused on the same thing. They just want to get there in a couple different ways. And if you can figure out how to bridge those ideas, and I think they're on their way to do that. And the Shane Waldron hire at offensive coordinator kind of shows the mentality that they went through to get that pick. They took their time. They didn't rush. They didn't go out and get the shiniest tool out there. They methodically went through the process with Russell Wilson involved, and they picked the guy that could marry up a scheme that would enhance Russell Wilson's physical gifts and abilities to command the offense, to put him in the best position to be successful, and make Pete Carroll happy, because the offense was going to be more efficient and take care of the ball and still run the ball. And so I thought it was a genius pick. Now, I could be proven wrong if it completely fails, but if it succeeds, it could save, at least the short term, it could save the franchise, because Russell Wilson's going to be happy. Pete Carroll's going to be happy. Pete will go out on his contract on his terms. And everyone would love to see that. And Russell Wilson will stay, and eventually he could be essentially running the franchise, because after Pete leaves, anything can happen. I think Russell Wilson's going to absolutely probably get whatever he wants at that point, but we're not quite there yet. We've got a little ways to go, so we'll see. Shows coming up, just briefly, I'll mention those: wide receivers and tight ends next week. After that, it's the offensive line. Literally, Mr. Meyer's favorite show of the year. We get to talk about offensive linemen for like an hour and a half. Isn't that?
I know,
crazy?
like I know, and it's everyone else is like, oh wait, what are they talking about?
Yeah.
What
I'll
else is
unsubscribe
on
that week. Yeah.
And I get that nobody else cares, but for me, that's my show. I'm a guy that studies offensive linemen. I don't know how that became my thing.
I don't either.
But it
That's
is
crazy.
And it was just one of those things when I was covering the NFL and covering the team and doing it professionally.
You just fell in love with those big guys.
I just got really into. You know what? I'll tell you what it was. It was Alex Gibbs, and Alex Gibbs, and his teaching philosophy on the outside zone and all of that, and really getting into it, and all of the little tiny details and everything he had, and I just really loved learning from him. And that just kind of became my thing. And then I started looking, I'm like, okay, so that's the outside zone, but what about everything else? And then I learned as much as I could about scouting the position and learning and all that kind of stuff.
God, maybe we should try to get Solari on the show. And you could talk to Mike Solari for like an hour.
Yeah, basically what would happen is he would answer questions. I would like geek out as like the most obnoxious person ever, asking like these inane questions that no one else would care about, and literally you would fall asleep, and so would most of our listeners.
Yeah, so that's funny. So after the offensive line show, we're going to do like an early free agency show. Free agency will have just started and completed its first 4 or 5 days, and we're gonna talk about that, and then we'll hop back into the prospects and all the way through the draft. We've got stuff planned. So, anything else? We'll just get out of here. We'll get back next week, and we'll talk more. Next week we'll be a little bit more focused on one topic, and unless something crazy happens, of course.
Well, next week's actually it's a good one for us because the Seahawks have been really, really interested in the tight end market. They have been way more than I expected them to be. But they have looked into pretty much every potential free agent tight end that's out there. They appear
that is
poised,
very true.
Poised
I'm actually surprised.
Yeah,
you know who got released today? Kyle Rudolph, Minnesota Vikings tight end, 10-year veteran. And Seattle has been rumored to be interested in him in the past years.
That would be a very interesting player in Seattle.
I think they could probably get him for like $5 or $6 million too. The other position we're doing is wide receivers, which is probably behind the 5 quarterbacks we mentioned early on, probably the strongest position.
It's a really, really deep wide receiver class. I
remember the last time Seattle had a really deep wide receiver class was the year before. I think Metcalf was drafted in 2017, and the
Seahawks took no one. They took nobody.
I know. I was flabbergasted.
One of the deepest wide receiver classes in history, where you're getting guys going in the 4th round that are usually second or late first round picks, and the Seahawks just completely opted out.
So needless to say, you know what will happen. You know what's coming next. All right.
Yep.
So follow Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. I'm at NW Seahawk. The show is at Hawks Playbook on Twitter. Seahawksplaybook.com has all of the shows on our own website, and you can find us on your favorite podcast app by Googling Seahawks Playbook Podcast, and you can find us on YouTube as well if you want to see us geek out live on camera. I don't know why, but some people do. So bless you.
See, here's the thing. The people who do, I can kind of understand a little bit because you're there and it's awesome. But then half the time I'm the one talking and people have to look at this. And I don't get why they would want to do that.
It's beautiful, Keith. You're just such a lovely person that, I'm here for it all the time, every week, 214 consecutive weeks. Now, even before we started the YouTube stuff, we did Zoom conference calls, and then before that we did Skype. So I've always been able to see you on the podcast. So I've literally 200 plus consecutive weeks, you and I have spoken about Seahawks football for at least an hour plus. And we've had to watch each other, and here we still are. So there's got to be something more than just looks when somebody's looking into enjoying another human being. So
I will say that my favorite episodes we've ever recorded are the ones where we're sitting in the same room.
That's true.
Those
That's true.
Those have been my favorites, and I look forward to when COVID's over, when traveling's possible, and we can do that again.
Yeah, for sure.
If nothing else, we need to have one of these together. Cheers.
All right. See you next time, guys.
Yep.
And what do we say at the end of every show?
Until next time.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NWSeahawk. Keith is at Myers NFL. And the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.